Well, thank you very much, and welcome once again to Where Are They Now? Looking forward to this one for sure. As we said in the previous show, today Tom Holliday is joining us, and this is our official preview of what's coming up a week from now. We're starting a new show here at Triple Play Sports, Talking Baseball with Tom Holliday. And we appreciate him coming down to we're going to kind of kick around a little bit what we're going to do on a weekly basis. It's going to be at 5:30 every Wednesday night, following Where Are They Now? And Tom and I have been looking forward to this for a while. We all kinds of baseball stuff we're going to cover. And I know you're excited about getting this thing going next week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to hear what kind of questions you can come up with so we can sit here and argue for
we could
for 30 minutes. But, yeah, it's going to be fun, Tom. And I think baseball right now is pretty exciting in the baseball in the big league world. And, college baseball right now bubbling all over the place. Guys are putting their teams together. And, even amateur baseball. I drive home now, and I look around Stillwater, and I see a whole bunch of little leaguers out there playing. And it's nice to see baseball on fire right now.
You have so many resources, and we can go so many directions with you, and that was really the basis of what we wanted to come up with. Yes, we'll talk cowboy baseball when college baseball rolls around, but this could be baseball in general. And just as an example, okay, we're going to use this as an example. I don't know if you heard this before you came in. I think it was a Milwaukee Brewers pitcher who punched the wall. He was mad. He was drunk, broke his hand. And I was telling the fellas, maybe 25 years ago, that management would have said, hey, you're done. It's going to cost you this amount of money. You cost us this, you're out of here. With the unions now, can you even do that anymore?
No, and honestly, Tom, it's like, we used to use a funny phrase about the inmates running the asylum. In coaching, you never wanted that to happen. And I think the way players are protected now, and the majority of the managers in the big leagues are young guys, and again, that's a new trend. And when a guy does that, they look for the reason why. He's such a great competitor. No idea about what it does to the ball club. If he's one of your studs and now he's out for maybe the playoffs or whatever, what harm it does to your team. But now, fining him and disciplining him, even in the off season, you can't even turn around and trade a guy like that because his agent's going to defend him, and you got to be careful because free agency right now always leans to certain organizations anyway. And I mean, what if he's the best player for the Cincinnati Reds? I mean, Cincinnati's trying to build right now, so you're not going to do anything to that guy except try to explain to him, hey, try not to hit the wall, and maybe somebody puts in a boxing bag inside the locker room so they can go hit that. But no, times have changed, and discipline measures they're all controlled by management.
One of the things that's going to be nice about this show, and since we're previewing it and kind of getting stepping in the kind of the shallow end of the pool today, we're going to take phone calls, and Tom doesn't mind taking your questions. So we'll give those numbers out every week, 533-1020 or 533-1051, either one of those. If you got a question, baseball question for Tom, it's just not going to be me asking Tom the questions, and he'll certainly want to take your calls. You dealt with this with Matt, and I'm just kind of scatter shooting here with topics, but that's kind of what we're going to do. Agents, good, not good for baseball?
Agents really started with Josh, and there was a day when it was a bad word, for college people. So, and I'm telling you, for I don't know, maybe 30 years, agents had to sneak around. I mean, the college, the NCAA, they did a really good job of monitoring college baseball. I mean, we had tight rules, and we tell our players, hey, if you got somebody talking to you, that's fine, but don't ever tell me you got an agent, because we were held to our honesty. And so agents, they're a part of it. At first I didn't know how they were going to play into the amateur part of it. And God, believe it or not, Scott Boras, like the year that he finished law school, he came to Stillwater, and we were loaded that year, and we had 5 guys that went in the first 2 rounds, and he knew it. And he came, and he called the day before and said, "Can he come in and talk to our guys?" And I said, "No." And then he said, "I don't understand." I said, "Well, Coach Ward's policy. Our kids they don't need agents. If you want to represent our guys, come to Omaha if we make it, and when we're done, you can talk to them." Well, he explained to me in his own legal terms that those days were over. It was going to change. And I was like, "Get serious. Who are you anyway?" And of course now you say that name and it's
Is he the premier agent now?
Oh God, yeah. In baseball?
Yeah.
Nobody can touch him. There's some good agents in baseball, but Scott has set himself, apart from everybody. But the oddity of the story was at that time he was right out of law school and he made up his mind he was going to change the baseball world, and he did. Now the NCAA never changed, so he didn't like the process, and so the term became, "I'm representing the family instead of the kid."
Okay.
And so they got around it, and Tom, right now it's like whether you like it or not, they're a part of the baseball world, and the NCAA has learned to turn their head. I don't think they still want kids out advertising it. I mean, you won't see it cost them a year of eligibility like it used to be. It was a pretty good threat. And now, believe this or not, 14 and 15-year-olds are being hounded by agents. 14, 15. You know how old that is? That's no hair on the face. That's like, turning their nose up at a cup of coffee. But I mean, they start on kids at that age. It's that competitive.
And now you got the NIL, which in effect the people who you sign on with the NIL, they're agents. They're booking things for you. So I wonder, do we all of a sudden now you want to go back to the old ways? Well, agents bad. What? How could you say that now when kids sign on with NILs? And they're working for people who basically are their booking agents.
Well, okay. I've been out of coaching now for 4 years, okay? And so you go out and you I work in the summer in Cape Cod. So in building my roster, college coaches, they're about 50-50 on placing their players in the summer. 50% of them don't really care. And the other 50% are trying to place the guys so they can go get better by playing. And the success of building a summer team is through agents, because agents drive college players to go out in the summer and play for a purpose, especially the kids in their draft year. Like if I'm going to be drafted next year, this coming summer is really important. So they become your best buddies. And honestly, I've gained a lot of respect for agents. And I think you get to know the guys that are out there that are actually trying to help their clients. You think agent, you think money, you think percentage, what they do to earn it. Well, I've seen some in the last 4 years that actually do care, and they are actually trying to help the player get better and build them. And if they got a weakness, I got one agent firm in particular. They're like, "Hey, my guy comes, he stays. If my guy comes and he needs fixing, and he's not going home." And I'm like, "Get out of here. Anybody can go home." And believe me, I've had some kids already that have lost 3 grandpas, so they can
so they had to go home. Yeah.
So they can go home.
Yeah,
But the agent in today's baseball world is, he really has his work cut out for him. And again, if you score and if you get a big leaguer, the way the money is, it can be worth it. It can, a guy like Scott Boras now, he's got, I don't know, probably at any one time 50 major leaguers. That's why he has a big office building in Los Angeles. But, Scott has a little group that go out and find him players, and then he takes over and does the contracts, and very smart.
Well, you pretty much.
And I think he's helped shape baseball. I think Scott is is powerful. I mean, he's got great ideas, and he's traditional. He's not a new guy that wants everything changed. He likes it's not broken. He likes it. Now, he's had a lot to do with the players getting a lot more money. So
Sure.
why would you want to break that?
Were you pretty much Matt's agent? I mean, you overlooked Matt's foray into pro baseball. And keep in mind, and for those who may or may not remember, Matt could have gone and played football here. He could have gone and played football anywhere. And even when he was playing baseball, there was a move to get him to go play football somewhere. So on a college level. But did you oversee this stuff when Matt was trying to make his way?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the year exactly Matt came out of high school, but sometimes when your mind's not there, you kind of caught me. But okay, here's the deal. When Matt came out, remember now, my goal at that time, I was his dad. I was also going to be his coach if he played baseball.
Right, correct. Yeah.
And he was really good at football. He liked it. I think Les Miles had convinced him that he would build an offense around him at Oklahoma State. So Matt was kind of a happy guy. And then baseball started getting ready for the draft, and then, he started looking like a really good baseball player. And so the hard part was you can't use an agent in baseball. And then what if baseball didn't work and he wanted to play football? Then you'd have an agent, and then at that time, if you had an agent, you couldn't play NCAA sports.
Right.
Now, that rule changed real soon after that. But going into his pro career, I helped my attorney, John Hartley, do everything that Matt needed to do, which all he needed to do at 18 was learn how to hit a slider, show up when the manager says show up, and get used to being away from home. So was I an agent? Maybe a little bit, but I mean, he was my kid.
Right.
If he needed shoes, I got him shoes. He needed a glove, I got him a glove. And most importantly, I was keeping an eye on the idea that, are you going to be a baseball player? Because if you're not, I always thought Matt was going to play in the NFL. And, again, in baseball, you can ask scouts, they'll give you an opinion. And most of them are 50-50. It's like you find a baseball scout that scores 50% of his guys, hey, he's a big-time scout. There's a lot of mistakes made in scouting. Now, in football, it's a different animal. If you're a quarterback, and Matt was, and you're asking guys like Jimmy Johnson and Dave Wanstead, who were friends at the time, take a look at this film. They work on film. Baseball, they work on your eyes and your heart. And, they gotta fall in love with you. First they see it, then they got to feel it. Football is a little bit different. It was all on film. And both of those guys said, Tom, you're crazy if you don't make this kid play football. Well, here I was kind of like forcing that football thing down his throat. And, he knocked on the door one night, and because of the notoriety of football, it cost him, many rounds. I think the Rockies took him maybe in the 7th round. And he would have been legitimately a late first rounder out of Stillwater.
Because they were worried about him going
in football scared people
Yeah.
off. And, some people, like even the Yankees, called me the night before the draft, and they said, hey, wait a minute, the word's out that Matt is signable. And I was like, well, we never said he wasn't signable. But you got to remember, he's a football guy. And they're like, well, we're not going to, we can't go more than $2.5 million. And I said, well, if Matt likes the Yankees, that's a lot of money, and so, the funny stories about everybody's draft, they're out there. And of course, 25, 30 years later, a lot of guys don't even remember the stories, but when it's your own kid, you kind of remember the story. And so, whenever it settled down, Matt just said, you know what, Dad, I really, money's important, but I don't think I can play 2 sports. I want to go play baseball. And then if I'm not good enough, I'll come back and play football. And I like that. I really like that. And I called the commissioner of baseball, and he actually took my phone call. And I said, Bud, would you do me a favor here? Would you let my kid out after 3 years? I know it's a special deal, but If he has to wait 6 years
Yeah.
to go back to school and play football, he's going to be 24 years old. I don't want that. I said 3 years. If he can play baseball, the Rockies will have to know. They'll have to make up their mind. And we did. And in 3 years, his contract was up. Rockies decided that Matt was a prospect. And it was an ugly 48 hours because the general manager that signed Matt was Bob Gebhardt, and Bob had been replaced by Dan O'Dowd, and it was like Dan's first 6 months on the job, and they had just signed their draft class. And here we come walking in like at the end of June, telling them that July 1, Matt's a free agent. And they look at us like we're nuts, and we just found out that Matt had to have his elbow fixed. So we were treading on funny water right there. And, after 48 hours of a basic Cold War, because they didn't want to do it, then it was going to have to come from the ownership. And quite frankly, we sat down with the owner, and he's like, all right, what are you gonna wipe me out here? And I said, no, but you're going to have to pay him what he would have got had he not been a football player and he'd been a first rounder. So we came up with a number, and he looked at me and he goes, right now? And I said, nope, don't want it all up front. I want Matt to keep playing and stay motivated. So we broke it up so that the Rockies would be happy, and honestly, the rest of it's history. But it was a unique contract, and even Scott asked me how I got that contract done, but I just did it through honesty.
How was Mom through all this?
Probably always wanting him to go to school, and again, Tom, when kids have to make their first big decision, you'd like it not to be over going to college or not. I mean, there's other things in life that come before that, but that was Matt's first big decision. And, she's like, hey, what are we going to do here? And I said, hey, I want him. I mean, I need him. He'd have been my
Sure.
He'd have hit right behind Josh. And in that same draft, we lost a kid named Roney, who the Rockies did pick in the first round. And his mom and dad went to Oklahoma State. So they told me Matt was going to school unless he got $1 million. The Rockies had never given anybody $1 million. So that year they gave Matt Roney $1 million, and they gave Matt, $875 or $880, something like that. So I lost a 3 and 4 hole hitter, which, assuming Josh was in a 2 hole, I lost him within about maybe a week. So I mean, it killed my team, that would have been on the field for me. And so you sit around, and it's like, Kathy's like, hey, do you think he can deal with being away? And I said, well, if he can't, you're going with him, because I got a job, and
It'd be hard for you to get away. Yeah.
I mean, she was more about education. I mean, I had to be in the middle of the road, and I saw Matt being a good player. But again, I know that at that time, Tom, 2% of the kids that signed out of high school, 2% ever saw the big leagues. And she knew that. And everybody in the family heard me say that on the telephone probably 9 million times to recruits. So now they're throwing it back at me. I got 3 voices. Well, hey, it's your decision, and that money, you're not getting it, whether you know it or not. It's going straight into the bank, and you're going to live off whatever the salary is. I said, these are my rules, and that bonus will sit there, because if you don't go to school, you got no retirement. So you have to be dad. And Matt was like, Dad, I don't care. You know that. I don't know about money. I mean, we bought him a vehicle, and boom, he was off to Arizona. And I remember I'm going to say maybe about 6 years later, 3 years into him being in the big leagues, or a couple years anyway, Leslie called and said, you think we can take his initial bonus and get it out of a CD? It's only making 1.5 interest. And I was laughing. I said, well, the deal on that money, that's his retirement. But he was in the big leagues, and he'd already started that little trend of, maybe being a really good player. So, that's a long time ago now. I got to deal with a 17-year-old grandson.
You know what? These are the kind of stories you're going to get on this show, though. And we're going to go all over the place. We're going to have guests throughout. And if you're just joining us now, this is kind of a preview. We'll let you know for the first time it's a done deal. Next Wednesday, 5:30, Talking Baseball with Tom Holliday. and we're going to go all different directions with this. And you want to thank some people who are making this possible, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to have 3 people, and that's it. And I felt like, when you and I talked about this, that 30 minutes. I mean, you asked me a question. It's 30 minutes later, we're done. But
goes in a hurry. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't want to get too many people in. Quite frankly, I wanted to be able to finish a thought. I didn't want you always cutting me off like you normally do.
Man.
So we'll have the Grand Casino, and those guys they're friends, and they're going to sponsor us. And then inside the show, we got Bob Moore, and we got my neighbor across the street's a highway patrolman, and I was telling him about it, and he said, "Hey, how can we sponsor?" I was like, "You serious?" And so he gave me a guy to contact. I did, and they're in. So there'll be 3 sponsors, and it'll be mostly you and I talking baseball. And I don't know, you and I have talked maybe by February if people think the show's worth it, that we might go to an hour, and then at that time we may have to add some more people.
Well, I know we're both looking forward to this. We've talked about this long before it became final and came to fruition. But there's always something about baseball to talk about, and we're going to cover just about everything we can. And you're adamant about this, and I'm right there with you. We could just make it an OSU baseball show, and OSU's great and OU's terrible. But that's not where we're going with this thing. We're going to make it broad.
No. And I know when you say my name, the OU people go, ooh, and that was a long time ago. And I get down, I see OU play 4 or 5 times a year, and then I see them play Oklahoma State. If you ask me a question about them, I'll tell you. I mean, it's like they've had some good players recently, and I can tell you about some of them. But bottom line is no, we're not. This isn't going to be slanted, and I'm not going to give you or anybody inside the house stuff on Oklahoma State, because that's Josh's job. And to evaluate the game, I mean, I do that like 20 times on television.
Yeah,
and
you do.
I don't think I homer there. I mean, at least I've been told I don't. I mean, I am a homer, but I don't. And the bottom line to the whole thing is it'll be honest. And if somebody asks me a question, I'll give you an honest answer.
And the last thing I want to get out to is, and maybe some of our listeners don't know, but you scout for the Phils. I mean, and you do work behind the scenes, and you evaluate players all over the country. And that to me is a fascinating part, because you could take us into the MLB ranks pretty well.
Yeah, on certain guys and certain times. I'm not like a national cross checker. The guy that runs around the country, literally pulling the trigger on who the Phillies draft. Mm-hmm. I basically cover this area. I cover Cape Cod because. The Cape is 300 of the best kids in the country for the next draft. Mm-hmm. So I'll see those kids up there, and when I come back, I put together a report, send it to the Phillies. And what they do with it, Tom, is like they pass it around. And some of the guys that you see in Cape Cod play with a wooden bat, they show a different player.
Yeah.
And guys that get tired of playing baseball by the 1st of July, I mean, just think about this. If you're that guy, why would I want to draft you knowing that you're going to have to play 140 games in pro ball? And if you're going to get tired after 65 or 70 games, you're not going to make it in pro baseball. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like what you get, what you see in the Cape. You get to see the kid that loves to play. I had a kid last summer that really, really disappointed. Thought he was going to be a high pick. And his agent called me and said, Tom, do you need an infielder? And I said, yeah, right now I need a lot. We weren't doing real well. And so I take him. And the kid was probably had digested the fact that he didn't get drafted. Now, he had set a pretty high dollar figure. And when his agent told me what it was, he said, Tom, he didn't have the kind of year to get that money. Okay? I'll throw a number. All right, I'll throw a number out here right now. Kid wanted no less than $500,000. So they asked for $800,000. He didn't get it. Mm. And he's at a really good school and a really good friend of mine. And so I'm like, but is he going to give me 100%? Or am I going to have a guy running around pouting all the time. I don't mind that. I'll help him rebound, but I want him to come up here and play.
Mm-hmm.
He says, Tom, he'll play. So when he showed up, I watched for that, and he got off to a rugged start. And I remember now, he'd been home for 30 days. He hadn't seen a live pitch. Then all of a sudden you jump in there and guys are 92 to 100 every game, and he struggled. And I watched him because I figured this guy's going to roll over and die on me. And so I finally pulled him over and I said, hey, Danny, quit trying so hard. Well, he kind of realized that I was a normal guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally found it, and he didn't have a good swing at the time. He was really into this launch angle thing, and it wasn't a good launch angle. Wasn't a good swing. So we were allowed to fix him, and we did. And I tell you what, Tom, about a week later, I couldn't take him out of the lineup. He would not let me take him out of the lineup. And I kept saying, everybody gets a day off. Nope, I'm playing every day. And he's a better player. Now, in next year's draft, if somebody calls and says, hey, what do you think about this kid? I mean, I'm going to give him, my feeling is, the kid turned on. And he did play until August 5th. So, I don't know. That's what Cape Cod's all about, and that's kind of what I do in the baseball world. I mean, I don't sit in the Phillies front office and tell them to go get another Riamuto, because there's only one of them.
If you did, you'd probably be in Philly.
Yeah, I wish I could find one of those guys.
Hey, this is the kind of stuff you're going to get starting next week at 5:30, Talking Baseball with Tom Holliday. And I'll tease next week's show. We didn't even get to this. And I'll have to lead TH into this, but this guy was actually a football recruit as well. Made some big-time visits out of high school. We'll get into that and a lot more next week. Appreciate you being with us. You make sure you circle the calendar. 5:30, Wednesday nights. Talking Baseball with Tom Holliday. We kick it off for real next week. And until we talk to you then, have a good night.